What's up, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of the Proteus Performance Podcast, where we feature our customers, their businesses, who they train, and how they train them. I will be your host, the head of human performance and sports science at Proteus Motion, Will Waterman. Thank you so much for joining us. We already have a ton of great guests lined up, world-class trainers, rehab professionals, that we're going to talk to, but we're not just going to talk Proteus. We're going to talk, about their techniques, how, the patients they work with, the clients they work with, the athletes that they work with, and how they train them. And we're going to talk Proteus too, and how they integrate Proteus technology into their philosophies and training paradigms. But the reason that we're doing this podcast is not just to talk about Proteus. We're doing this really to feature our customers. We work with all these great minds in these all across these various industries, rehab, professional and college athletics, biohacking, general fitness, and gym pop fitness. And people are always asking us, how do these businesses use a Proteus? Where do they use it? What part of a training program do we use it in? Or how to use it with baseball players? How to use it with MMA athletes? How to use it to rehab a knee? How to use it to rehab an ankle? How to use it to get a more efficient workout? And instead of us telling you that, let's have our customers tell you that and how they use it in their own words. And that's why we're doing this podcast. It's much easier to take the word of someone who's actually bought a Proteus and is using it day to day than from us, and we hear all these great stories, but we have such a hard time sharing it. So we're starting this podcast really just to have a platform for our guests, for our customers to be able to tell those stories, and so that we can share those as a reference, so that people can understand if they're interested in a Proteus. I have a business that looks like this. Oh, let me go listen to that episode, understand how they're using it. How are they training their clients? What's the ROI like? What's their fee structure, if that's the kind of thing they're going to use Proteus for, so that they can understand the full context. Because, Proteus is a very valuable tool across a wide spectrum of different applications in the human performance and, rehab space. And so it can be a little overwhelming for people to understand really how they're going to use it and how they're going to apply it in all these different ways. So that's really what we're going to try to unlock here. We're also going to be sharing not only the science of training that these different trainers and rehab professionals bring to us, but we're also going to share any new findings that we discover. We're going to talk techniques and ways that you can use Proteus as the new science comes out, so that you're always up to date, and you always have a place where, if you're like me, someone who really, really likes to listen to podcasts, you can digest that material, while you're on your bike, while you're walking, while you're in the car, and have this, source of information, when it comes to, Proteus, and not just Proteus, but also for these different sports and various topics that people that we talk to all the time are experts in. So if you want to learn about how to improve someone's fastball, you're going to be able to hear that right here. If you want to learn how to make someone jump or run faster, you're going to learn that right here. And it's not just going to be about Proteus only. They're going to talk about techniques off our machine as well. But there often obviously will be a tie-in on how to use that technology to help those athletes, to help those patients. So anyways, this first episode with Sam, Sam and I at this point have known each other for, almost half a decade. I'd say even a little longer at this point. And it's been an awesome journey. We reminisce a little bit, but really this is a history lesson. This is the episode where you get to kind of learn the origins of Proteus, how it got started, where the ideas came from. We talk about Sam's motivation to get into starting the company. And we also talk, a little bit about my own journey here and jumping on board with Proteus. But, I think this episode is a great first listen. If you want to understand kind of what we're about and what we're trying to do here with this podcast and with the company itself. So, sit back, relax, And, I really look forward to interviewing all these, amazing guests we have lined up in the next, few episodes. I think you guys are going to learn a lot. If you have any interest, even remotely related to rehab and conditioning and sports performance, you're going to be really in for a treat. And there's a very diverse set of backgrounds that are going to be on the show. So anyways, sit back, relax, and enjoy episode number 1 with founder and CEO of Proteus Motion, Sam Miller. Welcome to the Proteus Performance Podcast. My name is Will Waterman. I'm your host. I'm the head of human performance and sports science at Proteus Motion. And for our very first episode, who better to have on than our founder and CEO, Sam Miller. Sam Miller, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, Will.
Yeah, man. So, I think it's very important on this first episode that we kind of talk about why we're doing this podcast and what we want our listeners to get out of this. So, why don't you start us off? Like, what was the reason behind this podcast? Why are we doing this?
Sure. Good question. So, I think I'd say, our kind of growth has been totally organic to date, and it's been fueled entirely by these incredible partners that we've been working with. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we have a lot of smart customers out there, a lot of smart users and coaches. And, it's been awesome to see how, one coach then leads to telling another coach about it, which leads to another coach telling about it. And it's all been, this organic spread. I mean, we haven't, spent really anything on marketing. We've just been trying to get the word out there about what we do, and it's been awesome to see how it grows.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think it's like, and we've got this product that is incredibly unique, right? Isn't necessarily widely understood. Something that you really want to touch and feel and try to really get it. And I think as we just closed our Series A financing round. And as we're going through that process and trying to, going through these exercises of trying to communicate that really our value propositions, I think it became apparent that the best way to do that, to communicate Proteus's value is through the voice of real users and customers, who are doing truly incredible things. So my view is that, we're doing this, I think, for entrepreneurs, by entrepreneurs. This is for really kind of these amazing people that have decided to take their passion about human performance, turn it into a business. We have this ultimate platform for pioneers in training and rehab. And I think our view is that the only way to amplify this totally new message and kind of perpetuate this word of mouth is to let our partners, these true pioneers, tell the story.
Right. It's really, it's not to talk, we're not doing this to talk about Proteus necessarily, right? We're talking about the customers, who they train, what their training philosophies are, and talk about their stories, right? And that's really the goal. Obviously, in the process, we're going to talk about Proteus. We're going to educate other people about how these customers use it, how they integrate into their businesses, and what kind of benefits they're seeing from training their athletes and their users. And that's really the goal here, right? This is something that we keep hearing all these great stories and all these. It's been so fun. You and I have seen a lot of different customers over the years, from the very beginning where people did not know what the heck Proteus even was, and we're trying to show them all these cool benefits, to now it's definitely being more widely understood. But there's still a lot of misconceptions. There's still a lot of things that people don't know about, and it's still a new and novel technology. So what better to hear it from the customers who are actually using it versus us, right? And that's really what we're trying to do here is promote these customers, because also we're working with some of the smartest coaches in the industry. It's been truly an honor for me to be able to see it, coming from a physical therapy and sports science background, to see how these people are applying sports science in the field. And we just want to keep, telling those stories. So, I think it's something important too on this first episode for people that don't know what Proteus is, to describe what Proteus is, so it's something, obviously, you said before, you need to see and feel, but why don't you kind of, it's something we've worked on improving how we talk about over the years. Why don't you tell the listeners what Proteus is?
Yeah, good. That's a great way to start. So I think the simplest way to say this is we patented the first and only way to measure strength and power for 100% of human movement. We have rolled that capability into a software product that delivers insights from full body strength tests in as little as 3 minutes. And this allows trainers and kind of end users to discover where strength and speed stands compared to people like you for any movement, what to focus on and why. And it's really just this complete next level of personalization for training programs. But it's not just a testing tool, it is a revolutionary resistance training tool. We have created this incredibly new and unique resistance modality called 3D resistance that has some incredible benefits, like 2 times greater muscle activation compared to free weights and cable machines. It's very low impact on the joints, ligaments, and it's incredibly safe. But I think to just kind of zoom out for a second, like when we're talking about measurement, first and foremost, I think just it's important to put into context like what's out there, right? Mm-hmm. I think we have great options that exist across all these different pillars of human performance, whether it's biomechanics or sleep and recovery or body composition. But when we think about strength and power, what really is there in terms of measurement? I mean, I think the reality is that for decades, we've really relied on like limited movements like a squat or a bench press, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not to say those aren't valuable to measure. Of course they're valuable. But there's this huge gap in knowledge or understanding around, especially around rotation. And the reason that we've had to kind of rely for decades on, strength measurement for movements like a squat or a bench press is because it's only been possible to measure physical strength and power for movements that are performed in a straight line, right?
And from resistance that's coming from a straight line, right?
Exactly.
From a single direction, right?
Exactly. So strength measurement requires basically your ability to move against a force, right? So you need force from a free weight or cable machine. It comes from one direction only. Mm-hmm. And this basically creates a huge limitation in then measuring strength for anything but a movement in a straight line. And the issue with that we see is that humans, move in a straight line about 5% of the time. It's an estimate. It's probably a high estimate. So what about the remaining 95%? Twisting, turning, rotating. Right. We've basically invented, this system that provides force in any direction and throughout kind of a multi-directional movement pattern. And that has unlocked this ability to measure strength and power and a whole suite of other metrics for any conceivable movement, especially for rotation. So we filled this huge void in data and understanding around strength and movement that is profoundly significant. And we've been doing this for 7 years, but we're kind of we've barely started really on what we can do with that data and how.
Right. And it's important to kind of illustrate to people that haven't seen it. It's what it's doing is it's dynamically adjusting that resistance to mirror whatever movement you do. That's how it's done. That's what 3D resistance is, right? So even though, as you mentioned, you can use a pulley to do something like rotation, that resistance never changes in direction from where it's coming from. Whereas Proteus, it's dynamically always mirroring your direction of movement. And that's where that 3D resistance comes in that enables all that measurement that you're talking about. And, as you mentioned, we're just getting started, but what we're measuring when we're using it. It's velocity, power, acceleration, deceleration, path of the movement, range of motion, all these different metrics. And obviously the software then stores it, analyzes it, gives you suggestions on how to train based on your results. So you have all these, things that are enabled by that resistance that enables us to actually analyze it, do stuff with that data, because it wasn't able to be measured before, right? So this is what we're really doing with this data. And then obviously there's, as you mentioned too, there's also these strength and some benefits from training with this 3D resistance too, that I know we'll go over with in depth with in this podcast with different guests, but really revolves around creating that constant resistance in the opposite direction of whatever movement you do. It allows you to load things the way you've never been able to load things before. In particular, as you said, rotation is greatly benefited. I would argue that we load rotation better than any other product on the market, period. And I think it's not even, that's not even a gimmick. It's just a fact of the way that we're loading it. You just can't load that any other way dynamically better than how we're doing it. And there's some unique benefits, like you said, around increasing muscle activation, around improving ground reaction force energy transfer from the ground up through the body into the hands. You really get a full body workout with this thing that's very efficient in a short amount of time. And so, especially as the product is developing, we're going to only increase our offerings from what we enable our users to do. Right now we're really doing a lot of testing. We have workouts, but these things are going to change over time and going to get better and smarter. We're going to take that data, suggest workouts. You're going to, all kinds of exciting things that we have on the roadmap. Some of that I'm sure we're going to hold close to the chest because we don't want to, reveal all our cards yet, but it's something that we're really excited about. And I think what's important is we're listening to our customers to gather their feedback about what they want to see in the product. Right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, we've kind of opened up the door for a totally new era of strength diagnostics in a way. And I just remember when we first came up with the ability to do this and kind of extract this data and this capability, it was super exciting. And then came the very painful realization of like, who cares? What does it mean? Right.
Right. Yeah.
And then we were like, oh yeah, we have to start working towards that. And that's what we've been doing for several years now. And I think what I'm super, super excited about for the kind of lineup that we have of guests for this podcast is going to be, let's talk about real profoundly significant, really exciting examples of how this data is used, right? You can't get it anywhere else. What the impact of that is. This is truly a completely new kind of revolution that we believe is going to become a standard of human performance, just as a heart rate, measuring heart rate became, and so, or has become. So it's really, really exciting. And I think we've got just phenomenal partners that doing incredible things.
And I think we should say too, like, and something we should have probably mentioned earlier is that this isn't just used for sports performance, right? This is used for rehab. This is used for fitness. This is used for biohacking facilities. We really have a wide range of users. It's been called the Swiss Army knife of, for a business, right? For a fitness and rehab business, because you can use it in all these different aspects. And that's the stuff that we'll go into depth, obviously more and more in the podcast itself. But you mentioned 7 years ago. I think this is a good time to jump in, something that I always love hearing about. Not everyone obviously knows this. Let's tell a little bit of a quick, I'm sure this could be a whole hour-long podcast on its own, but let's do the quick version of the history of this thing. What's the origin of this? I get asked this all the time. I love hearing the story. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the origin story of Proteus?
Yeah, I'm happy to. You're going to have to time check me. I'm going to try to keep this short.
Will do.
Here it goes. So The short version of it is this. It's I think there's a couple of things that kind of layered on top of each other, occurred in parallel, that kind of like set this opportunity up, and the real story here. And I think for me, like, I grew up athlete, playing all sports, all types of sports, and was incredibly active kid. I had some pretty a lot of experience in physical therapy. When starting at, I think it was age 9 is when I first started to do physical therapy. For I actually had osteochondritis dissecans in my knee. I had Sever's disease in my tip of my ankle, and you know, I just started to develop this kind of deep experience in physical therapy, and then a deep kind of frustration with that whole process. And it wasn't, as I've said many times before, it had nothing to do with the incredibly talented physical therapists I was working with, right? Mm-hmm. It was really around the tools that I was using, or that they were able to use to improve my performance and my conditions, right? And so I was in and out of physical therapy, into training, and back and forth. And I just remember specifically, you know, I was kind of going through a training program with, it must have been 12 or 13, with another one of my friends who was recovering from a completely different injury, actually. And we literally had the exact same program. They sent us home with a sheet, and I was just thinking, like, I don't understand how we are not able to really personalize it. Yeah. Now, of course, like, there's all just limitations of data here. So I kind of grew up with these, like, a lot of these like layered kind of frustrations with this process. Or really, it was more about ideas and opportunities of why hasn't this changed, right? And it was a combination in my mind between if you walk into a gym today, but very much looks similar in terms of equipment selection than it did, 20, 30, 40 years ago, in my view. So there was that. And then I think that led to, I think in my mid-20s, started to get really interested in this quantified self movement. And what I started to see was a lot of companies starting around digitizing existing pieces of equipment. So putting a sensor on a bike and a screen, putting it on a cable machine, whatever it may be. And my view is that that's awesome. It's exciting. I love where this is headed, but there's, if we're just kind of digitizing an existing piece of equipment, there's only so much information of value that the software products from those digitizations can provide. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of started the wheels turning around. Well, I think we actually need to start from the ground up. And I think we need to kind of kill two birds with one stone we need to create a new and different form of training and exercise altogether, right? And we're going to do that in order to unlock new data and information, right? Mm-hmm. That is going to lead this kind of open up this new world of personalization. So all these things were kind of buzzing in my head. This is starting probably in 2011 for me. And so what I did was I started by using a concept for an exercise training device that my dad invented. It spun out of MIT in the early 90s. And he then, basically the entire time I was growing up, he was like a mad scientist in the basement of my house. Like kind of
great pictures of that, by the way.
Yeah.
We might have to put those in linked out or something. There's some great images there. Shout out Larry Miller.
Shout out Larry Miller. He, just brilliant guy. He's a mechanical, electrical engineer, but he's really an engineer through and through, brilliant one, and mathematician. And had like no vision for what he was really trying to do. He was just trying to like make a technology work that was around like basically eliminating inertia in training and trying to do it in 3 dimensions. And the problem was and the mechanical challenge was he could only kind of get resistance in 2 directions. And he was just this tinkerer. And so he kind of just did this for a long period of time, and kind of fizzled out. And so what he realized was he was trying to create this training tool. If I could solve the three-dimensional resistance, then I can extract data from that, right? So I basically took that and figured out a way to make the mechanics of it work, and then the resistance we use magnetic particle breaks to provide resistance, and then pull data out of it, and we built a software product around that. So it's been years of development that all started in very humble beginnings. Really, I would say as far back as the early 90s in the basement of my house outside of Boston growing up.
Nice.
And then it really turned into something that was that had a vision and a real opportunity from a market standpoint. Starting with the work that I started in about 2014, and now we're in kind of a new stratosphere. So and
Yeah.
beautifully, that's through that kind of evolution is where you and I met. And I remember, like, I think it was in 2014, like I was just going through all this history of where my dad had left off and what he was working on, because he just kind of abandoned this development. And I realized, or I saw something around it. Actually turns out he was doing a little bit of work with Dr. George Davies, right? It's the godfather of isokinetics, as I understood it. And that was around the time that I was like reading all these textbooks and research studies and immersing myself. And I saw there was a thesis or a dissertation. I want you to talk on that had two names on it as kind of graduate students that were involved with George Davies. One of them was Will Waterman, and I got Will's email address from George Davies.
Oh, really? I don't think I remember that's how it started.
I sent him a cold email along with the other kind of author, and I only got
my roommate Josh. That's my roommate Josh, by the way.
I got one response. It was from Will, very enthusiastic. We got on the phone, and I was like, I just absolutely love this guy. And that was in, I think, 2014, 2015. You might have been in Chicago. I don't think you were even at Stanford yet.
No, I think I was at Stanford at that time. That's where it gets fun. But 2014 definitely would have been Stanford. Late 2014 is when I got to Stanford from Chicago. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's where our relationship began.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting too. Like, you actually have a similar. It's funny how these kind of innovators like yourself, and actually, I think I could also speak for a lot of fellow PTs, have a similar origin story of having been injured and being frustrated. A lot of us are failed athletes, right? That wanted to succeed in whatever sport, got injured, went through physical therapy. In your case, obviously it helped influence your need to want to, improve the status quo. And for me, it was, really just drove my interest into the profession, right? And wanting to dig down and figure out the body, right? So that was kind of more my path. It was like, how does the body work? Had ACL injuries from football. You've seen, I'm a tall, lanky guy. I had no business playing like the line in football, but, is what it is. Lots of knee injuries, and that influenced, spent time in rehab, had me really want to just learn as much as I can about, human performance and physiology. PT was obviously the kind of to me, the like most stable career path forward with that. But I was always super interested in human performance, and then even once I started my career, I started to obviously, keep pursuing as much knowledge as I could. But it really, I was really fortunate. One of the reasons I picked the school I went to was because George Davies was the professor there, and he had such a big reputation. Once I was there, and he picked us to, work on the prototype your dad built to do for our thesis project for our doctorates. He picked, me and my roommate Josh for that project, and we performed basically a reliability and validity study on it, and we thought it was amazing the whole time we were using it. But I always tell people, probably wouldn't be as commercially successful as our current product if it had been released in its form that it was then. It looked more like a garage, project. It did not look like
it was a disaster, man.
Yeah. So
I mean, it was a brilliant work that it set us up to be able to do what we're doing today.
Right.
So we could have done what we're doing today without that. But the amount of work required to actually, I completely underestimated the amount of work that's going to be required to even make that thing even work. It took a couple of years.
Well, I mean, I remember even your dad, though, like I could tell early on, he's definitely one of those guys when you meet him and worked with him to do that project. Obviously, I met him before I met you, and obviously could tell the dude was, out of this planet, smart and, had built this thing. But I also understand what you mean by he didn't necessarily have the vision of where it could go for like the fitness industry and all that. He just knew he had this idea that was like, he knew there was something there, right? Like, is that kind of a fair assessment? He knew that this was the benefit.
He's absolutely brilliant. And he wanted to build a technology, right?
Right.
That was like, he wanted to build 3D resistance training.
Right.
That was his idea. He couldn't get there from a training standpoint. Couldn't solve the third degree, which is like the arm moving in and out and the resistance adjusting for that. And we patented that ability in 2017. But that was his vision of like this new type of training tool. And my vision was the data and the software, but in order to get there, we need that resistance in 3D. So I've got to solve that problem first, which we did and patented in 2017, unlock the data, patented a whole suite of, we've got a lot of intellectual property protection. And a lot of that was developed with some of our partners at the Hospital for Special Surgery, early partner of ours. But I think what's interesting too, though, is that like, for me, like I don't have a formal background like you do in this space, right? My background's in engineering. I studied history and economics at Vanderbilt. And I got a background in design as well, from an architectural standpoint, and even product design. But I think one of the things that I really like about this company and this team that we've set up is that we've got these incredibly talented people from all of these different domains. Got folks on our team that, from NASA to Stanford Health to, some of the big fitness equipment players, Precor, Kaiser. The whole is great people across from all these different domains. And our kind of mantra has always been like, no ego, right? We're developing a platform and a solution, and we're going to learn from the early adopter partners on how to use it. And I think, Will, you were a critical part of the equation very early on, because I recognized, I was like, I've got this, I've learned a lot, like self-taught, to be able to, really identify with problems, but I've got a huge, information or knowledge void on the practice side and on the human, on the body side that you filled and continue to lead as you're kind of growing this human performance.
Well, also, you opened the door and I shoved my foot in and then just jammed my way in, because I wasn't going to let you not, because I thought it was awesome even back in the day but I kind of let it go after I started my career, because I thought I never heard about anything from it. So once you reached out, I was like, oh snap, this thing is actually going to become the thing we thought it was going to be. I'm staying involved with this. You know what I mean? So,
and you persevered too, because you didn't. We love the perseverance.
There's definitely been some some ups and downs with the way the market went and things like that. But hey, man, that's what's been so cool about this team is, honestly, that I'll second that too. We have an amazing team from all these different walks of life and experience and engineering, fitness, rehab, really the full gamut. It's really cool to see all those efforts come together, right, to make this product and see how everyone's efforts, you can see it everywhere, right? And it's such a cool thing for me to come from a background where I'm really an individual contributor, working with one person at a time, and in the rehab space. to working on something where it's truly a team effort and you're seeing how everyone's efforts come together. It's so cool. Well,
and it's a journey. I just want to say one thing. It's been a journey. You said ups and downs is spot on. What that has provided us, though, is I've said earlier on, this is, really, this is for entrepreneurs in a way, right? Who have turned their passion around the body into a business, right? And that's what we understand, being entrepreneurs in a different business, but for the purpose of providing a product and a service to these businesses. We have developed this maximum amount of empathy, because this is all about, our job is to provide something, and we do it very, very well, to provide something of significant value to our partners and customers that they leverage for their own business success. And we've seen that to varying degrees, and it's really evolving, especially as this software product hits this next level, which that roadmap is just mind-blowingly cool. So a lot to be excited about, a lot to talk about, and there'll be even more to talk about as new features and products come out. So
yeah, totally.
Everyone,
like we said, maybe we'll hold some of those cards close to the chest. We'll definitely tell everyone about them as they're coming. Obviously, the audience and all our customers, one of the great things is it is a web-based product. So all of our customers, when they get a machine, it's future-proof. They get all the new, versions of the software as they come out, right? So it's one of the great things about it. And it's been really cool to be a part of that and see how a customer gets it day one, it can do X. And then, half a year later, it can do so much more. Right?
So many layers, 100%.
Right. So, and we have so many cool plans in the future. So, well, I think for this first episode, I don't want to, go too deep. I think it's something I really want our customers to tell a lot of the story for us too. So what do you say I hit you with some of what I'm going to call lightning round? I'm going to come up with another name. I think I don't know if I love lightning round. It seems cliche, but we're going to come up with another way. Just some fun questions we're going to ask all the guests, and you're going to be my first attempt at this. All right. So obviously, let's just kind of give me your best answers. No pressure. There is no right or wrong answer, obviously. So and I might answer them with you a little bit. So I might go these kind of different order. But do me a favor. Tell me what your top 5 favorite exercises are. Proteus or not. It can be Proteus, it can be not Proteus, but give me where your 5 favorite exercises you do.
That's easy. We'll start with Proteus. One of my favorite things to do on Proteus and in general is the chops, both sides, 15 pounds. There's literally nothing better than it.
Love a chop.
Love the chop. Love the chop. Love the just standard core rotation too. Stir the pots. Figure eights.
Figure eights. Yeah.
Yeah, and then outside of that, I've been you can't see behind me, but I've been getting into some stick mobility, so it's a little bit.
Oh, nice.
Love it. Absolutely
awesome.
Love it.
Yeah.
So I'd say those are probably my 5. I don't know if that was actually 5, but those are probably.
No, you nailed it. That was 5. Well, I'll just add on to this because I'm only going to answer this in this episode. I'll let the guests answer all other one. But I love with Proteus, the great answer with the figure eights. It's a really unique exercise that is hard to describe until you do it. You do a figure eight on Proteus, it's loading the entire way. It feels so good on the scapula. You do it straight armed. It's a great scapula training tool. Love the chops and any rotational movements. My favorite program though is going to be the Afterburner, right? Yeah. So which almost does all the ones you just mentioned. So that's a workout routine. You guys will have to try it out if you haven't. Customers that have it, make sure you try it out. It's basically a HIIT routine, 30 seconds, all out. It takes about 3.5 minutes. You're dead afterwards, but you feel great.
We heard a quote from somebody when you first designed that workout. It was like, they said it was like fighting through quicksand.
You're right.
For like 4 minutes. It's
Yeah.
just a new experience. It's just a totally new experience, and
Yeah.
it'll kick your ass.
Yeah, it will kick your ass. And the thing is and obviously this about me. My other big thing is cycling, so that's my other big one. But which is kind of fun because bikes, train with power. I know I've done I've even done some posts for us on our social media account about this, but it's a power-based training platform, bikes are. And I've learned tons from that experience before even joining Proteus, and bringing that to Proteus. Proteus is really just a power meter, but for any movement, right? It's like a force plate for any movement, right? So it's really taking all that data, the same type of stuff that's been shown to be really successful in a sport like cycling, and bringing that to everything else. So, all right, so I got a couple other ones for you, and some of these I don't know if I'm going to like the answers. Who's your favorite athlete and why?
I'm gonna give you. This is supposed to be lightning round, so I can't think about it too much. I'm not going to give one single greatest favorite athlete. I'll give a couple of my favorites overall for different reasons.
All right.
And this is not a conclusive list. If you ask me this again tomorrow, I'm gonna have a different answer probably. Favorite athlete of all time from this is retired too. From a talent perspective, Bo Jackson.
I was gonna say Bo Jackson. That's
Seriously?
awesome. Yeah,
So, literally, absolute freak. Like I think he's one of the most incredible athletes.
Amazing.
That's probably ever lived.
Yep.
Huge fan. I'll also throw on that list for different reasons. I am a big fan of Lionel Messi. As a playmaker, I think he's unbelievable. Love the way he moves. He's absolute magic. And then actually, let me just leave it with that. I don't want to go any further. I think this will turn into a much longer conversation.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I really was going to say Bo Jackson. If
That's
I go
amazing.
kind of like retired, he's just, to be so good at so many sports and all that, and just total beast. I think my current favorite athlete is Steph Curry, just because he's like someone he is the best at a skill, right? And he's not even that big of a guy, like he's just so much more skilled than everyone else that he's able to be successful. Whereas I love LeBron James is a beast, but LeBron James he'd be good at any sport, right? Like he's just a freak athlete. So anyways, okay. So now here's another one. I love this one. I've heard this one from other podcasts. Give advice to younger you. What would you give? What advice would you give to young Sam Miller?
Don't be so stressed.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and I'll caveat that with I think I'm a pretty paranoid person from I think that's a good thing actually, from I think that drives and fuels a lot of ambition and wanting to challenge yourself and push yourself. I think though there's a point where some of that is, especially on the stress side, is not necessarily good stress or stress that's channeled into solving problems. And it's I think I would probably, that's some of the advice that I would give. I would say something around channeling that stress towards improvement.
I like it, man. That's funny. Mine would just be like, mine one's not as deep as yours. Mine would be like, don't give up on basketball. I was decent at basketball and I let myself quit too young. So yours is better.
Okay.
So here's another one. What are your favorite podcasts? What podcasts do you listen to? Besides this one, of course.
Yeah, this is definitely number one, pre-release. I'll say, I'll just give a quick answer on that. How I built this, I love how I built this. I think it's incredibly important that entrepreneurs of all different sorts and industries tell their story. I think it's really, really important for budding entrepreneurs to kind of, you can't understand what it's like until you actually do it. But knowing that when you're doing it, that there's a lot of commonalities and parallels between, successful companies early on and failed companies early on. And just understanding that, being able to see and understand how a lot of these things are normal, and hearing people that have gone through similar experiences, Unbelievably important, also incredibly interesting. And I love people that I love to hear from people who have done incredible things, have faced incredible challenges, and been able to ultimately win.
I love it. Yeah, that's a great podcast. And I kind of assumed that would be one of your top ones. It's very appropriate in your position. So, but hey, that kind of, ties in well. I'm a podcast junkie, so I listen to them all the time, especially on the bike and stuff. But I would say kind of in this realm, it's the Huberman Lab podcast, which actually was I got turned on to by one of our customers, Austin Lynn. He turned us on to it. He was the first person to tell me about it. And it's probably the best evidence-based performance podcast that I've listened to, where you actually take in the science and really distill it down to what's important as far as human performance and wellness. So that's probably my favorite. Of course, I love Cressy's podcasts as well, who's someone who we've been working with for a long time, and we actually have a couple other people that do their own podcasts, are all excellent. But Cressy's got to be one of the OGs for us that that I've been listening to way before we started even working with him. Just because he's such a brilliant mind. So so yeah, all right. Well, hey, I think this is a good time to wrap up, and I think we really just hope that everyone listening, you understand what we're trying to do here, which is we want to obviously we have this awesome product, but what this is going to be about is about our customers and their journey, their stories, how they use Proteus, of course, but really about their life experiences and how they're training their athletes, how they're running their businesses, and the success stories and failures, right, that they've seen throughout their career. And, obviously we are now hoping to be a part of their journey and only, help them to achieve their goals, whether it be for, their athletes' goals or their business goals, right? And we really just want to feature that, make sure that we're building those stories up, right? And making sure that we're getting those messages out there, because I think we've probably should have done this a long time ago, because we've been hearing all these great stories from all these customers for so long. And I know if you're like me, you're telling them to your wife, you're telling them to your friends, but and then we try to tell them to other customers, but if it's hard to retell someone else's story, so let's let them tell their story. Yep. And so that other people can actually listen to it and learn from it and grow. So
100%, we're going to do whatever we can to elevate pioneers. That's it.
There you go. I like that. Let's keep it simple. Elevate pioneers.
Love it.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for listening, and we're looking forward to seeing you on future episodes.